Welcome to the Fishing Daily Podcast, sponsored this month by Saltwater Marketing, digital marketing services for the commercial marine industry. Here's your host, editor of the Fishing Daily, Oliver McBride.
Welcome to the Fishing Daily Podcast. Today I'm joined by Patrick Murphy of the Irish South and West Fish Producers Organisation. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks, Oliver. Thanks for having me on again.
Patrick, surely you must be fed up at this moment in time with all the problems that the industry has been going through the past 2 years.
Yeah, one of the meetings we had with one of the previous ministers, Derek Cleary, for his short term was there. I described it like a boxing match. That at the stage we met him, we were after hitting the canvas 2 or 3 times, with COVID and quotas and Brexit and market collapse, bad weather. The industry was getting an awful trouncing, and it was tough. It's tough. And are we fed up? Absolutely, we're fed up. This is ridiculous. We have a European war now, maybe a world war. And the effects of that then is we weren't prepared as a country. We don't believe that we have enough fuel in the country, storage, it's very hard to work out where do you turn to next, and it's fed up, absolutely. But do we keep going? We've no choice. Just like the lads that go to sea, risking all, trying to make a living, we just can't give up.
The big problem seems to be food production sector needs fuel. Should it be a priority, do you think?
Of course, but not just for us, for all agri sectors. I think people are going to realise now what we've been saying all along. Food security is really, really important. I kind of laugh at the same time because, does it actually take something like this to remind people of what it's like not to have food? Look, we need shelter and heat and warmth, and we need water, and we need food. They're the key elements for life, The rest are bonuses. The rest is addition, But to live without any of those, you don't survive. You starve. And for us to be so ready to give up the future of our fishing industry, And I mean the future now, when we're talking about after Brexit, we lost 25% of the fish. We're hoping to try and get that back, and reason with the European Union and the Common Fishery Policy Review. And we're not asking to steal fish off anybody else. We're looking for a rebalancing of the way that the fish is given out, and that our coastal community are entitled under UNICLOS law to be able to catch the fish that nobody else is catching in our own waters and not let it go dead. I don't think that's a big ask. I think that's a reasonable ask. And for our whitefish fleet, it's critical. But to think that the cure instead is to get rid of a third of our fleet on the third time of asking, who's going to catch the fish? We seen in COVID, Oliver, when the Italians kept their PPE gear, we had it bought. It was bought and paid for. And they wouldn't ship it because they felt they had a greater need for it in their own country. And rightly or wrongly, they kept it, right? And the difference was that we didn't have it. So are we going to go to the same return again? No. We've gone looking for food. Other fleets will come in and catch the fish. And we won't have it. We won't have it for our own people. We won't have it to trade. We're an important country. We're an island nation. It's amazing that we are the country that's going to savage our fishing fleet as an island nation. We're not on Europe's mainland, but we're an island nation surrounded with the best fishing grounds in Europe. And we found a map there, an ISIS map, that actually showed the true nature of fishing grounds and the dark depths of water off the Spanish and French coast where they cannot fish. The water is too deep there to trawl, And we reckon that it's not 29%, maybe 29% of the Northwest waters, but the actual fishing grounds of the Northwest waters, removing the UK from it, it's 50 or 60%, and we're the ones that have to go to business. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm fed up with that.
Surely, the government or ministers have to realise that it's such a prized asset because our EU neighbours don't want to give it up. But yet, no, we're like the fishing industry is fighting a battle there with somebody somewhere inside the government that's just not willing to play ball with what is actually the proper thing to do.
Well, we see in the European politics now, and some decisions, to me, I'm scratching my head, and you know, I feel for the Ukrainian people, like, but some of the decisions that are being made isn't going to help the Ukrainian people. It's actually going to cost more lives, like sending bombs and ammunitions and rockets into a war zone is only going to end up in more death and more destruction. You know, it doesn't take a genius to work that out. So for us then to be told, like, you know, that other fleets get to keep our fish, like, it's not, they're not keeping their fish, they're keeping our fish. Like, we never gave away the fish in our waters, right? We gave away the rights to manage the stocks in our waters. We had an agreement at the Common Fishery Policy back in 1973, copper fastened in 1982, right? It's about time now that we really did have a proper review and look at all the other pillars of the Common Fishery Policy. Why do we only stick to that one when we don't honour the other ones, where a coastal community that's most dependent on the fishery gets first dibs? You know, that's in the Common Fishery Policy. How do we set aside that part of it? You know, the socio-economic importance of the fishery to the country or the island that's most dependent on it. I think that's us, you know, and we're cut off from everything else from Europe. We have to import everything. So surely be to God, we should be entitled to harvest our own resources. And if we're not, and we're being annihilated, our fleet and our fishing fleet are being destroyed, and not just now, right? So we have to remember that we did have 400 boats, right? And that's 400 by 5 is 2,000 people fishing in our boats. We'll have 100 now at 7 or 120. You know, we're down by half. And these are jobs in our coastal communities that generate 7 to 8 other jobs in individuals. Why are we paying the price again? It makes no sense to me. You know, so we need to be strong when we go to Europe. And what we learned from the last task force was that there was a lot of confusion between what we were told inside the meetings, what we were told was coming back from Europe, what we were asking from Europe, and whether we were able to get this or not. And I'll explain the confusion. Other countries seem to be getting a better deal and had more flexibility with the BAR funding and what they could do with it and what they were allowed to, on it. So for me, that's a miscommunication. Now, whether it is on purpose or not, I'll reserve judgment for that. But what it could be is that people don't understand what they're actually being told, or there's a communication problem there, you know? And for me, then you need more people. You need, you know, we said to the minister, you know, the more hands that are there, the lighter the load is for everybody. We share it. So we've asked the minister to put us on the steering group, to put us on the front foot of the negotiating with European Union, not to be bystanders or people that are there just to look and watch. We're there to participate, and we've asked the minister that. So 7 of us signed this document. So, like, that's what we'll be saying tomorrow now to the chair of the, or not tomorrow, sorry, Thursday. We'll be saying to the chair, like, you know, what was the outcome? And to be honest with you, if he says no, we're not going to be a participant, then my organization has told me that we're not to participate. We're going to leave. So here we were, the ones leading the charge to get this up and running, but we're not going to be a participant in something that's not going to suit our needs. You know, it's a waste of time. We spent night upon night putting in submission after submission into the original task force, and we were the only ones in the end that didn't sign up to the decommissioning scheme the way that was written, because we felt with the input that we put in, it just didn't ring true. And it's in the report that that's true, that one set of boats, right, in the reports couldn't be decommissioned, even though they lost the most fish, because it would cost too much to decommission them. Yet on the other side, that didn't apply. So even though we showed how much it would cost for the people who were leaving the industry, I would say forced out. I don't think any fisherman would stay there if they could make a good living. And they're being forced out, but they're being underpaid to the value of what they cost to get into the industry. Sure, that can't be right. You know, especially when the money came from Europe. It's not coming from the Irish taxpayer. This money was given by Europe, €1 billion to solve problems, mitigate the damage, and 63 million of that is going to wipe out a third of our fleet. When even if you only gave, if you gave the 12,000 per GT, like they said, and hit the targets, you would need 96 million. So there's dishonesty from the start. There's no real intention, you know, that they had never, no way were you going to meet the 12,000. You know, it was like a prize that you were never going to attain, you know? Crazy stuff.
It seems to be an awful mistrust there between what the Department of the Marine is doing and what, you know, what the fishermen want. Now, this common fisheries policy review, all the fish producers are going to come there. I think there's 2 NGOs invited. I don't know how or why they're there, but at the end of the day, if the message is put across by the fishing industry that they want this, do you trust that it will be delivered the way that it's been said to the Commission?
Well, all we can do is go on what has happened in the past, right? And as I said, we were at the meeting, but we didn't hear from the European Union. Other people conveyed what was being said, or the rules and regulations and the guidelines and everything else. Now, I don't know, did they hear those guidelines and did they go, no, we're not accepting these, or okay, fair enough. If that's the way it is, it has to be. If I was there, I would say, no, you said this is flexible. We're not accepting this, and give the reasons why we can't accept it. And just to give an example of that, we were told by the minister that we couldn't have another tie-up scheme until we had a decommissioning scheme, right? So how were we allowed to have it last year? And then I was also told, I asked the meeting, right, will we do it in tandem? So that the minute, and I mean the minute, that the tie-up scheme would be formalised, that the decommissioning scheme would be formalised and whatever else, that very month you could have the tie-up scheme. And they said, no, we'll start working on it then. And sure, it won't take long because we've done it already last year. So there's the confusion for me, Oliver. You know, like, it's crazy. And here's the thing, everything's changing, Europe is changing, and we see Ukrainians, fair play to them, and it's right that they're in a war zone, and all the regulations and the rules that surrounded refugees into Europe was changed just like that, with a click of your fingers, and rightly so. So for somebody to come back from Europe and say, well, oh, you can't change anything, or this is the guidelines that have set out, you know, it's set in stone, that disproves that. So I'm not accusing anybody of coming back with the wrong tale. What I would like is the opportunity to be there with those people and to put the best points forward and to try and negotiate, and more of us there, to see could we get a better deal, you know, and use the words back and give the reasoning why we need to get a better deal. Because I'm sure that if somebody in Europe was told, listen, this man paid 14,500 to get his boat, he spent another per GT now, and he spent another 2,000 to do it up, and he can show this, that's 16,500. How can you justify that man getting 12,000 when you're giving this pot of money? I don't think Europe would have said, yeah, that's what we're after. I think that Europe would say, no, we're not looking for decommissioning. It's up to the Irish state to decide how you're going to solve this problem. And we always said from the start, from the flotillas, is that we didn't want decommissioning. We didn't want money or compensation. We wanted fish. We wanted our fish back. And that's what was said by the industry. And like, I heard that message, clear and simple, from everybody else. You know, I'm standing by that. And we want our fish. So we need to do this in the CFP. But like, the way that it's kind of orchestrated, like, oh, wait a minute, now you're going to have a decommissioning scheme. If you get a decommissioning scheme, then the argument falls away for more fish. That's logical. Well, if you need an X amount of fish, now you've only this amount of boats, then you need less fish. So we're not giving you more fish. So like, how can you make an argument for more fish without the fleet? It doesn't stand up. So I'd like to be there. I want to talk to these people. I want to look into the whites of their eyes when they say no to me, because I want to be in that room. No, I want to be there. If I can't get there, I want at least one of my industry colleagues to be there. I don't think that's a big ask. There's too much at stake here. You know, this is the last throw of the dice, I reckon. There is no fleet to protect if the fleet is gone. You know, are we saying that even 120 boats is too much? We have the richest fishing grounds in Europe. It shouldn't be so.
Two things that I've come across and recently, and one of them was I actually wrote to DG MARE and I asked them, are they pursuing the Irish government to decommission boats from the fishing fleet? And the answer I got back was basically, no, they're not. It's up to the government. Now, the other one was recently, I heard that EU Commissioner Sikiavenkis has said that if the Irish minister would come and ask for a levelling up on the fish quotas, it would be considered. But none of these things have been asked of the EU Commission. Somewhere along the line, somebody's not coming out with they're coming out with their version of what's been said. And it's very undermining for people in the industry when we're not getting the proper story, isn't it?
But you see, Oliver, what you've said is what I'm after. You got to go to the Commission and speak directly to them, right? And you got a different story. So maybe you heard it in a different language or a different way to the other person that might have got the same thing. They might have pulled something else out of it. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, you know? We'd say, right, maybe they did get it wrong. But you can't keep giving the benefit of the doubt. Like, if somebody isn't hearing them, maybe the hearing aids isn't turned on, right? Then you have to make sure somebody else is there to confirm that. That is not an outrageous request. Like, there is no way we're going through the same procedures and the same protocols and the same work that went with the last task force. You know, we learned a lot from it in our organization, and we're not doing it again. It didn't work for us, you know, despite all the effort and the work that we put in. And it's not sour grapes now, by the way, if anybody's saying, sure, what did they expect? What we expected was a fair hearing. We came up with solutions that were there. And fair enough, you won't get all the solutions. You might even get one or more than one, but you would get one. Like, we got nothing. And like, we even asked in the end, like, you know, for the producer organization, say, if I lose half the membership for the Irish Southwest, we're there to fulfill a role for our members, right? And that's what they hire us to do. But like, we have to be financially viable as well, too, like. So everybody else who suffered from Brexit, right? Everybody else that suffered from Brexit and the TCA deal were included in some sort of compensatory package, right? But not the POs. You know, I know we asked late because we were more interested in looking after everybody else than ourselves, but we did ask. Nothing came of it, you know? So like, this, if we're going to have people to have a voice for the industry, we have to be there. There's a role for us, you know?
If you do lose more both from your membership and say like Irish South and East lose membership and whatever organisations about there, would you foresee a restructuring of the POs?
Well, that's up to the individual people who are left, like, you know. Somebody said to me, like, would you take one of my members if they wanted to come into your organization? I said, of course I would. And they said, why would you poach a member off me? I'm not poaching a member off you. Same for any of my members. If somebody in my organization feels I'm not doing a right job for them, they're not my prisoners. You know, I don't have a hold over them, and nor would I ever feel that way, that somebody would feel trapped or obliged. You know, if they don't feel the service that they're getting is right for them you know, then they're entitled to move. Same goes for anybody else. Do you know what I mean? It cuts both ways. So that's up to the individual boat owners. And look, all I know is that all I can do and all the work that we do and try and put it out there that people can see it. And I know we're being criticised for it. I know we're being criticised for the flotillas up the thing. And I hope people didn't expect it to be a magic wand, and just because we went up the river, that was it. That's all we needed to do. It'd be lovely if that was the case. But we're in a campaign, like, and everything we've done since is part of a campaign. We're constantly working, constantly trying to do the best that we can and address all the issues, right? So that we try and get the best outcome for the boats. Like, as I said, I would love to be able to wave the magic wand or have the right decision making to do it, because I think it's very simple, to be honest with you. As you said, go out to Europe and we say, listen, he's not catching this fish. It's in our waters. If it was international law, then we wouldn't be asking. you'd be giving, and that's what the review of the common fishery policy must happen. Like there's no other question about this, and it should happen. So, amalgamation, absolutely, if that's what it takes. But if we lose the voice in our country for our fishermen, it's not going to be a good thing, because we do more than what people may think.
That's pretty obvious. Yourself and Brendan and all the rest of them are there for your members 24 hours a day, and you're sort of working really hard for them at the moment, and times that's really pressurized. But we seem to be coming back to the same problems again and again and again.
But Oliver, I'd say
sorry.
All our problems, and I mean all our problems, would be solved if we got more quota. You have flexibility to move, you have flexibility to catch more fish. You don't be steaming hundreds of miles away from fish because you're not allowed to catch it, or if you do catch it, you're illegal. It's a totally different dynamic. It's easy to be compliant then when you have a grey area to work within to be compliant, and the opportunities are there. So like quota is the cure. We have to get more fish in our own waters for our fleet, and it's that simple. The rest. Sorry for interrupting. Maybe it's something else you were looking for.
What I was going to move on to was going to talk about the strategic environmental assessment.
Here again, now we're back to what we were talking about at the start, like having people involved in this. So like we were told that the strategic environmental assessment in December had gone nowhere, right? Now, you can't draw down the funding until that's done, until that work is done. So like, we contacted people that we knew that were capable of doing this work, because I felt it was a panic situation, because to go through the protocols and the policies and the procedures for this, it was at least 2 to 3 months down the road, even if you did find somebody, to go through all the checks and bells and whistles for them to be able to do the job without even doing the job. That's just to get the right to start it, right? So we were told in the meeting the other day with the minister, like that, we're hoping to have it done by the end of the year. Oh, I hold no blame to any individual person for this, but as a collective, including myself, if I knew that at the start of the year, right, that this wasn't happening and we were going to do it in June or July instead, I would have raised my hand and I would say, no, no, we got to get this done now, because that's my business acumen. You can't wait for something like that. You can't put your eggs all in one basket that will turn out fine, and the minute you advertise it, somebody will be there to take it up and run with it. It proved that's not the case. It's the opposite, and that's what we're talking about here. So if we were involved from the start with that, we'd be further ahead. And like, I don't know the implications now with the SEA, whether we can draw down funds or not. All I know is that we're in a quandary now, and we're in trouble with that, and it could have been avoided.
Many other things like that's happening as well. Like, you were on the radio last day talking about the wind farms, and I suppose this is something now that was coming up as wind farms, marine protected areas. That there's talk about this belt around Ireland where we'll have wind farms. So that's surely pushing fishermen out of the ground. It's pushing them further out to sea.
You see, I don't people understand this, and to be honest with you, it was Teresa Morrissey from the aquaculture industry sat me down, on a phone call for an hour, and said, Patrick, you didn't listen. And I said, what didn't I listen to, Tracy? She said, the one thing that we were doing when we were working out the marine spatial planning was we didn't insist, right? And insist that our industries were covered under the legislation of the marine spatial planning. So we're not. So who is the greater power now? Is it the Minister for Housing, right? Dara O'Brien? Is he the one that calls the shots on the marine environment? Or is it the Department of Agriculture under Charlie McConalogue? I'm sad to say, I've been told it's the prior, the Minister for Housing, that he has the power to grant licenses outside of the sea now, and the Department of Agriculture and have no rights. They can deal with us, but they can't deal with the marine environment. They're only a spectator. So we're the ones that are on the water. We're the ones there first, and now we've been set aside. So my fears have been realized. We are now the poor tribesmen in the Brazilian rainforest that are being pushed out of the rainforest, and we're being told, sorry, it's for the greater good, good luck. And no compensation, no relocation, no nothing. We just lose our rights. And that's what I believe is after happening. That's crazy, like. So if anybody says, well, why do you have rights in the sea? I'll tell you why. You can't go to sea unless you're legalized. Go to sea. You get an authorization, go fishing, and they specify all the ground, right? Outside the 6 miles, outside the baseline. Now that's gone, you know. So like you can fish everywhere. So we fished in these are traditional fishing grounds, and they're called traditional grounds for a reason, because generation after generation of Irish fishermen have fished there. So that's squatters' rights as far as I'm concerned. There is a legal right to that. But to be told now that there's no legal rights for you, that the legal rights now have been conferred to the Minister for Housing, and you can take a back seat. That's absolutely crazy, like. So the wind farms then, that's why we tried to negotiate with the wind farms, and the negotiation, do you know what the negotiation was? The negotiation was for a seat at the table to try and make sure that when decisions were made, we'd be there from the start, not to be notified afterwards or told, well, here's where we're applying for lads and we're going to do this with you, we'll do that with you. Not at all. It should have been based, and where were the scientists? Do you know? Like everything we did with the marine spatial planning seems to be, yeah, we have it all there and it's in writing, but we won't use any of it. We won't apply any of it because we need the power. We have a target to reach by 2030 or 2050 or whatever it is, and away you go. And it doesn't matter what else happens. And like, we've asked for the science. We checked out this and look elsewhere. And what's happening in other jurisdictions with these wind farms, it's starting to raise alarm bells. Do you know what I mean? And they can't be ignored. So I'm talking to other fishermen and they're saying this stock is gone and that stock is gone. And the only change to the environment is the wind farms. So like, you know, what else is there? Unless somebody else can say it's something else, then you have to start thinking it must be the new entrant into the environment is after making this change.
The onus should have been on the wind farm developers to prove that their product would not damage the environment, and not on the fishermen to have to make the argument that, listen, there's no science there to disprove that it's not it. As far as I'm aware, and all the science that I've read up on, this is a huge impact on the marine environment. And it's displacing fishermen, it's changing currents, it's just reeling a huge problem that's based on land out to the sea, and it's not thought out.
No, see, this is what I'm saying to you, is like, what do we know? Like, as more has found out, we have a precautionary principle when it comes to the science of marine environment, but that seems to be set aside when it comes to this. Now, you can imagine what's going to happen with the oil and stuff. It's a case of, well, you know, we're going to have to push on. But like, you know, why push on with that? Like, you're going to bring something in like that said, oh, well, just because it's green, because they say it's green. That's not necessarily so. Like, you could absolutely wreck the marine environment, you know, just destroy it, you know, and it's just crazy that type of technology is considered to be the savior, but it's only going to affect a small number of people, so it's grand. That to me seems to be the indication. But people forget, a boat doesn't just go out and catch fish for money. A boat goes out to catch fish to feed people, and they bring in millions of meals. Let's put it that way, you know, millions of meals. Fishing does. That feeds millions of people. So take that out of the equation. That's millions of people going hungry. You know, yeah, they can turn on the lights and they have the cooker to cook the food, but then there's no food. So like, which is better? Do you know what I mean? It's. I don't think it's thought out. I think we're we're like a herd of animals, you know, that they hear something or a bang and they run in one direction. They hear another bang and next thing we're all running in the next direction. And, you know, we're reactionary rather than thinking about it and planning, which we should be as human beings, you know. And I just, once there's money involved in it as well, then too, away you go. And I said this to the wind farms themselves. You see, if they were contingent, right, on developing it, so nobody gets a site, nobody gets to go into the farms unless they develop it. You know what I mean? But what happened? We've seen one of the richest men in Ireland. He got a license for mobile phones. The first thing he did was flag it off and made a fortune. Do you know? So this to me is the same. There seems to be this rush. Get the license, get the permission. Somebody else will develop it. We won't have to worry about that at all. We'll take our cut now and let the next fellow be taking his cut later on. Do you know? And to me, there's no skin in the game then. For the first round, I would like to see a developer that will apply for it, start it, and run through with it, because then they are involved, then they are invested, and they can't afford for it to go wrong. So they have to look after the people that could stop them and interfere with them, and that's the fishermen, you know, and they're the ones I want to talk to.
Well, my idea of things is they're talking about reducing our dependency on carbon-based fuels. We should be looking at reducing our dependency on electricity, because it's far too big. What we're looking at, our usage day to day worldwide is massive. You know, and we're not going to offset that problem by building wind farms.
No, because we've the biggest battery in the world, right? In the solar system. It's called the sun, right? There's power being emitted from that every minute of the day. Not in the same place now, mind you. But we also have the moon, another machine for generating power. It's called tides. You can, and like electricity, as you know, is generated, right, by a spinning turbine, right? So you just need something to turn the turbine. So you have the tide coming in and the tide going out, right? And not everywhere now would be suitable, but certain days, right? That'd be one. We have mountains, we have waterfalls all over the place. There's another way of turning turbines. You know, we don't have to put wind farms out onto the seas and stuff like that. I believe the turbines that they're using, to be honest with you, the technology is flawed. I think it's a totally different turbine they should be using and kill less birds from these massive things. But anyway, that's my own view. That's two, you know. And then we have fish guts and stuff like that, and bioengineering, right? Biodegradable, that creates natural gas, you know. And like, why don't we use that? And they're on about carbon footprint and about dung and excrements from cattle. Like, these are great things that you can use to create gas, like, you know. And there you have a renewable source, a real renewable source of energy. And there's your full circular economy. But I don't think it's sexy enough, or there's enough appeal so that millions of people or investment funds can buy into this. Because this can be done locally, or it could be done in the farm, it could be done in the town, and make them self-sufficient. I don't think we're looking at this the right way at all.
Back to the quayside, which is where we should be.
Yeah, but like, you see, this is all interconnected.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Oliver, you see, we need solutions for everything, because one thing will drag us on. This is what I'm saying about the food source, the oil. It's all linked, you know. And people say, "Oh, he's gone off on a tangent, or he's gone off elsewhere." But you can't discuss one problem unless you discuss all the problems. Do you know? It's the same in a boat. Like, you look at the whole lot. You know, if there's no oil inside the engine, it's not just the oil, it's the damage that is done and the machinery that's seized up and everything else. Throwing oil in on top of it ain't going to fix it. You're going to have to strip down the engine and replace the parts and everything else. So it's all linked. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same with me. I look at this stuff bigger. That's what's wrong. We have ministers that are looking in isolation at one problem and not linking up with the next fella. You know, like, again, we have in our marine environment, we have two licensing authorities now. Who's in charge? Is it Dara O'Brien, or is it Charlie McConalogue? And these questions need to be asked. Like, back to the pier side.
Speaking about that, what is the situation with the control plan?
Again, this is back to confusion again. So I'm not on the consultative committee, so I only get words. And I did, hands up, I missed a meeting. I couldn't get to it. I was busy with others. important issues. So I just couldn't get to that meeting that particular day, right? And I was told and reported that, you know, everybody was clapping each other on the back and saying what a fantastic job was done. Finally, a solution was reached. You know, the white smoke went up, and away we were, and we were moving forward finally, right? And what was being proposed was being accepted. That was all thrown out the window this weekend. You know, we said suddenly the minister said, no, we can't do this. Pelagics, it's all back to square one. Now, who and why decided what we were doing that was okay last week suddenly is not? Who made that decision? What was it? The commission? What was it? Our own country? What happened here? Like, do you know what I mean? And that's crazy stuff. Like, how could you move forward with that? And what are the implications? Are we back to taking ice off the fish again and whatever? You know, it's just absolute madness.
Well, I asked the minister's office today about it, and they referred me to the SFPA. So, you know, it's you know.
So is he saying the SFPA, right? So that's saying no, and I'm going to be very candid about this. So the man that retired from the SFPA, Tim O'Donovan, negotiated a way forward for this. So if the SFPA has now changed their mind that Tim O'Donovan isn't there, then somebody within the SFPA, right? This could be the reason why Mr. O'Donovan resigned. So 2 weeks later, or a few weeks later, it's all turned over. So if the SFPA, if the minister's saying it's the SFPA overturned this, then the only thing that changed was the head of the SFPA.
I was told to ask the SFPA. All queries on the control plan have to go to the SFPA, and you know, this is what you call it. This is a huge major issue. If there was something in place that was going to work, what else can replace it? We've been searching for a long time now in order to get a replacement.
But we had the replacement. We had an alternative. It was working, and there was no problems with it, right? And the minister's now saying it wasn't Europe. So the organisation that put the plan in place to solve the problem have now revoked it. If you're correct, if both of us. So if the minister is correct, he's not sending us to Europe, and he's not sending us to himself, right? He's saying nothing to do with me. This is an SFPA. So he's referred you to the SFPA. So that means the only one that changed it is the SFPA. Otherwise, it's worse. If the ministers, after changing it, didn't take responsibility, couldn't explain why he changed it, and then sent it to the SFPA knowing that he did it, well, no, that's a bigger problem.
That seems to be another problem on top of a lot of problems that we've been talking about tonight.
So can you understand my desire now for the industry to get in with this, the Common Fishery Policy Review Group? The mess that's going on the others. This is crazy. Like, you know, where's the accountability? Who's responsible for this?
That's a question, you know, we're asking is who's this? Why are we in such a situation for such a long time that really and truly none of the other countries around us in the EU have this problem? They seem to be able to, their fishing industry seems to be able to get along pretty well. They're flourishing.
But it's worse than that. It's worse than that, Oliver, right? And this is the truth, okay? And you can go down to Castletownbere. We have French flag boats filling up Spanish registered trucks and sending them back out of our country with no checks and balances, right? And the European Union is telling us that they can't trust us to do what they're doing, right? To send the fish to the factories. Now, their factories are hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And there was an agreement with France and Belgium that they would go back to their under their control plan, but not with Spain, right? So how come a lorry from Spain is being loaded up with fish from a French registered vessel? Is that lorry going down to Bilbao, turning around and going back up to Spain to wait, and then turning around, or sorry, back up to France to 8, and then turning back and going back down to Spain. You know, like, and I'm not challenging our authorities here or anybody else here. What I'm saying is the Commission. The Commission are trying to tell us that they did a risk assessment on the way we were acting and our procedures, and they found them wanting, right? So they revoked our right to weigh the fish in the pier. But yet they can let another country take in our fish from our piers, and there's no problem there, you know. I find that incredible. That's just makes no sense to me.
Feels like that the whole industry was undermined, because the information has to come from somewhere. Somebody has to point fingers, and the Irish fish industry was undermined, where it was being treated definitely unfairly.
Yes, but it's the ordinary fishermen that are suffering. My question is to the Irish fishermen: how much more of this can they take? And we have to look at what's happening in the representation and see. Like, I'm attacked the whole time for online and nasty stuff now, mind you, about the waste of time of taking the flotillas up to Cork and everything else. But I don't see anybody else doing anything, do you?
Hasn't been any action in Ireland like that for a long time. That was definitely, you know, and to tell you the truth, it has stuck in the public's mind. People who've seen it on TV still go, what happened after that? They still ask me questions, what happened after that?
Yeah.
Disappointing to say that, you know, that not because of your lack of input and hard work, but in other areas outside of what you're doing and what other representatives are doing, there seems to be like the government's dragging, or minister's dragging his feet, or somebody's dragging his feet, when they really should be, what you call, stepping up to the mark and not dithering and getting the job done, and getting it done in the interests of the fishing industry, rather than in some strange interest that is not in the interest of the industry or of the country.
No, you have to remember, Oliver, that we didn't just go up there with the flotilla, right? We went up there with a list of what we saw as needed to be worked upon, right? So we identified the problems, and we came and we brought solutions, right? Now, if the solutions didn't work, fair enough, but the solutions weren't acted upon. Do you know what I mean? So the reason why people are saying what happened next, it wasn't down to us. If I was the minister, right, and I mean this, I'm telling you, there would have been action next. And definitely 100%, and no way would we have not done what was needed to be done at that time, and simple things that could be done. For the atypical worker scheme, for instance, they've been dragged kicking and screaming over this. We told them it wasn't fit for purpose, you know, and that's just one example. Look, I don't have the list in front of me now, but you can be assured the penalty points issue. You know, our organisation, right, and I'll say it on the show here, have contacted the human rights of Ireland to see, is this discriminatory, completely discriminatory against Irish citizens? This is totally and utterly discriminatory legislation. So when people say, well, what has the Irish South and West done? This is the type of work we're doing wholesale. As you said, like, we're frustrated because we're not getting the responses and the reactions that we want, like what you're doing. No, that doesn't matter. No, have to get on with it. Like, you know, it's crazy to me. And as you said, we're putting in the work, but the reason why we're not getting the results is because we can't get the word out there. So that's why we have you talking for us and interviewing us, and we have other media streams as well. We're trying to get the word out there, but it's up to the fishermen and everybody watching this themselves have to get onto their families. Like, you know, there's a collective here, and families and friends and neighbours and people that are working in the villages and towns around you. Like, take fishing out of Castletownbere, it's 85% of the economic driver for the entire region. What's going to replace it? Do people realise, like, this isn't just about the 6 or 7 men that go to sea. This is families, this is shops, businesses, pubs, tourism. Who's going to come to a place where there's nobody there? Like, if you walk through Castletownbere most evenings now, it's a ghost town. You get a couple of people going into the takeaways and stuff like that. And it's basically it, you know.
Pretty much like Downings.
Yeah, and like, we're laughing at that, but it's a serious change from when I was growing up, when these places were buzzing, like, and boats were in, and some boat would be in, and there'd be lads out, and they'd be socialising and meeting, and they'd create a buzz around the town, and the town was alive and vibrant, and people wanted to be there, you know. I can't understand why we're allowing our industry to be taken away from us, and we just throw our hands in the air and say, Ash. I'm not saying Asher. I'm saying no way. I'm saying if you're going, and the minimum that should happen is that anybody that invested into this industry and is forced out for whatever reason has to be compensated correctly, except nothing less. Why? No other person in any other business would accept to be shortchanged like that. And this ideology that, oh, sure, it's free money. It's not free money. Those boats were paid for. Those licenses were paid for. People worked all their lives to earn them. Like, you wouldn't say that to a factory, somebody that bought a factory when he was 20, and when he sold it for a couple of million. Sure, he shouldn't get that at all, because he's not entitled to it. He shouldn't be a millionaire. What's the difference? You'd never hear that being said. Do you know? Never.
Madness. What's happening at the moment?
Madness.
Patrick, I'll have to leave it at that for this interview, because you said you didn't want to be on for an hour, and you're nearly on for an hour. But we'll catch up with you again.
Yes, anytime, Oliver. Like, but look, I'm delighted you're giving us the opportunity to try and tell what's happening, because people need to know, and that's why we're having these meetings as well around the country. Hopefully, that in town halls and stuff like that. We had one in Banton. We had 100 people at it, and the shock and horror that people experienced inside there. These were educated people, and the one question is, how did we get here? How did we allow ourselves to be put here? So we'll finish on that. Thanks, Oliver.
Take care.
Take care, buddy.